The bull and the better.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Betting Weekly Hardball, part of the Betting Weekly Studios and the Bet Rivers family. Along with Doug Kezirian, I'm Adam the Bull, and we've got picks for you. We've got games for you, although on Thursday, it's always a bit of a limited slate, Doug. But that doesn't mean there can't be some good winners for you to pick for the fans today. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. We also have live wagering, Adam, right? We jump in on a game that you never know. That day baseball, as we found out yesterday, always keeps things compelling. But baseball is such a grind, and it's a lot of fun. It can be aggravating. I mean, here we had Dylan Cease ready to get touched up and things like that, and sure enough, he's throwing a no-no through six. So that at Yankee Stadium, no less, and that's on the heels of New York pulling back-to-back 20-point comebacks in the NBA playoffs. So sports is the greatest reality show, as many people like to say, and we just try to stay ahead of the curve as much as we can and have some value. But, sometimes you catch breaks too, like the Rockies laying another egg and losing a run line and a team total for that matter. But the run line, fortunate in extra innings, you get an error and things like that. So sometimes the breaks go your way too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. My Dylan Cease first inning pitches prop crap the bed, but we did get lucky with the Rockies giving up the 2 runs in the top of the 10th, and the Tigers able to cover the spread there. So but there are definitely some interesting games today. We'll get to all of it. We also want to hear from you if you're watching the show right now. And obviously it's a new show. The show just started this week. Doug's on every day. I'm with him Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and it hopefully become a regular part of your programming day as you try to pick baseball games and props and all the different opportunities you have. You talk about the games going on right now. The Orioles lead the Twins 2-1 in the top of the 4th, and the Rangers and Red Sox are scoreless in the top of the 2nd. We do have one game coming up in just a few minutes, the White Sox and the Royals, Doug. And I just want to, even though we didn't have that game on the agenda, but since it's coming up here in a few minutes, is there anything you've seen in that game? Chris Bubich has pitched really well for Kansas City. They've been great at home. The White Sox are terrible, but particularly terrible on the road. But if you want to bet on the Royals, it's minus 250, not a surprise. Anything you like in this game or not really?
It's interesting. We talked about it yesterday, how sometimes it's good to play bully ball, right? And bet against the Marlins when the Dodgers are pitching, because we did that on Monday or Tuesday, is it? I can't remember. But when you have the pitching match and things like that, but you got to be careful. They're not going to lose every game, although the Rockies are going to try to prove that theory wrong. But, White Sox are a disaster and certainly a team you want to fade, but not every day. And you mentioned Bubich for the Royals pitching much better. It's not a game I wanted to get involved in, given the price, well over $2 in the Royals side. But look at the Orioles, right? They only have 3 more wins than the White Sox, and they're winning right now in Minnesota 2-1, and have 2 on, nobody out in the 4th. So you got to be careful just pouncing on teams and things like that. You really need to flush it out, because there's a price attached to everything, right? We all know that from when we go shopping for deals. And if something is a discount, then it's worth it, whether it be a high price, a low price, an underdog value. And you had the Reds a couple of days ago that had the lead in the 9th inning, plus 188. That's pretty good odds. I mean, live line, you can always play out of things along those lines. So nothing in this game, but it's just really, can't kick yourself for missing out on a play, things like that. You really just got to understand how you assess things in the vacuum with the information you had at the time.
One little nugget on the White Sox before we move on. Yesterday we talked about the Rockies and the fact that their whole team stinks, bullpen, rotation, lineup. The White Sox, actually, their rotation has not been bad. They got a Rule 5 pick in the rotation, which you almost never see, Shane Smith, and he's pitched solidly. And they got a couple of prospects there. Their bullpen's horrendous. Their lineup's horrendous. But their starting pitching, unlike the Rockies, they actually have one part of the team that's doing at least, serviceable work. And that's been the White Sox with Burke and as I mentioned, Shane Smith.
Yeah, and I had them, what was it, for like a half unit on a same game parlay the other day, plus 440, and they had chance. It was like a 0-0 game late. It's just frustrating, but that's why you're getting plus 440. But the prop we used was for Shane Smith. I believe it was 4 or 5 plus strikeouts, and that got there with ease. So we boosted the money line from plus 220 to 440 or whatever, plus 200 to plus 440, and it was great. We just needed the bats to wake up a little bit. But there's so many ways to bet these games. You talked about the Padres, how many pitches in the first inning.
Yeah.
And it's really good to flush it out and think about, where is there value here? Am I really getting value on this play? Or is it really sort of an action play with a kind of a lean? So I've been doing a lot of half units in baseball because it's such a high volume and grind every day. But you also got to bet into teams that I think, one thing I like to do is bet into teams. And I talked about this with the Phillies, and we both kind of agreed that lineup's just hot and popping.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm all about backing teams where there's a bounce to the step of the whole lineup. And I think that's certainly the case with Philly right now. And it's not just Kyle Schwarber. So I like them. And one thing I also wanted to mention, being out here in Vegas and being in the betting space for 2 decades plus is, I'm pretty connected to a lot of bettors and a lot of odds makers even, and they get some good information across the counter, whether it be flagged accounts, meaning, high profile accounts and things like that. So I try to aggregate a lot of information. So it's not just my handicapping.
Right.
I'm aggregating a lot of information from, people that specialize this. I have my own betting team, and there's definitely advantages in that regard. And it's it's something I try to share with the people on shows like this.
Yeah, and absolutely. The more information you have, the more likely you are to win. Again, as we talked about, it's not an exact science, but the more accurate info you have, the more inside scoop you have, it's going to increase your chances, and it can be the difference between a good day and a bad day, just having certain knowledge, especially if you get it from insiders that may know things that other people don't.
Right. And knowledge is power, as the old saying goes. So you always, no matter how much you love a game, side, total, whatever, there's someone fairly sharp or really sharp on the other side. So it's got to flush it out, and it's good to just see things from another perspective.
I'm curious. You mentioned the Phillies, and they're not off today, but they start a series in Cleveland tomorrow. And obviously the Phillies have been hot. We both like their lineup. They're a loaded lineup that was kind of cold to start the season, but they've kind of caught fire here. They're playing the Guardians, who don't have a particularly good lineup on paper, but they've scored 36 runs the last 5 games and 26 in the last 3. From your perspective, when you see a lineup that's not great on paper, but it's hot, how much does that factor into your process?
Well, it depends how hot they are. And if they're hot for a while, then you start to reassess just how much on paper you want to give stock to those stats, right? Maybe that's wrong, right? I don't think a lot of people thought the Cubs lineup would be as potent as it has been this season. So at some point you need to punt on things on paper. And and every sport's different. That's different in basketball, which is team-based, things like that. And baseball is obviously a team sport, but it's such an individual sport at the core, batter versus pitcher. And guys can improve, and whether it's, and then you got to just dig deep. And if there's a narrative you can apply, I'm doing my handicapping for the WNBA, and there's so many off the court sagas for some players. I mean, I know 2 players that were former All-Stars. One definitely, right before the season last year, she lost her father, and she was brutal the first half of the season. So if there's, and then Kelsey Plums, who went through a high public divorce and things like that. She had an off year last year. She got traded. So it's like, do you believe in some of the stuff that's a narrative? So in some of these baseball players, I know Imanaga, I think last year, trying to think if it was Imanaga or another Cubs pitcher who had really developed his pitches, and it was 5 pitches in the minors. It's not Imanaga. It's the one from Mexico, Tijuana. It's blanking on his name, but
oh my God,
he evolved his pitching and his repertoire, and that's why he was such a good pitcher at the start of the season. So players are allowed to get better. Don't forget that. And I say that in college sports, especially. Like, teams can get better in college basketball. They begin in November and they end in April if you're in the championship game. So, freshmen are allowed to not be looked at as freshmen after a couple months.
That's true.
And so there's ways to just process, but you got to be careful of how you assess things on paper. But sometimes regression does occur.
Javier Assad, that's who you're thinking of, I think.
Yes, Assad.
Right? Yeah. And he's been hurt all this year, but he pitched great last season, especially the second half. All right, Doug, I want to get into the best pitching matchup of the day, and that's the last game of the day, 9:40 Eastern, 6:40 Pacific. The Dodgers and the Diamondbacks in Arizona. We know how good the National League West is, Arizona hasn't been quite as good lately, and the Dodgers, who started 8-0, then were kind of playing middling baseball for a while, they've gotten hot again, and they're 25-12. Not a surprise that they have the best record in all of baseball, since I think we all expected them to win 1 million games this year. But the pitching matchup tonight is fantastic. Brandon Pfaadt is going for Arizona. He's had a pretty good season, coming off a good year last year. And Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who in his rookie season had some ups and downs, but not so far this year. He's been as good as any pitcher in baseball. The ERA under 1. And I know you got a couple of picks you like in this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point Yamamoto is going to come back to earth, right? But maybe he doesn't this game. And so it's a big sort of division game. D-backs, like you said, have been playing well for the most part this season, not necessarily on fire lately. And I talked to a pro bettor last night, and he just doesn't love the spot for the Dodgers flying cross country. And I know it was a day game, and their bats woke up late, but they got to go from Miami all the way to Phoenix. And look, they fly private and all that stuff. I'm not too deterred by that. But I do believe in Pfaadt against this Dodgers lineup. It's a little dangerous, but Mookie's not exactly raking right now. Freeman certainly is, and then Ohtani's been fine. He's just not knocking the cover off the ball. But I do expect Yamamoto to pitch great. I always get a little uneasy about the Diamondbacks because I think I mentioned it. There's just craziness that happens late in games with their home stadium and the alleys and things like that. I don't want to rely on the Dodgers bullpen, even though it's been fine. I'm going to play the money line for a half unit in the first 5. It's a little pricey, but I'd rather, and it's a two-way market. So if it's tied after 5, so be it. You get your push, but minus 152. You're getting Yamamoto in the Dodgers lineup. That's pretty cheap, all things considered. Usually you have to lay the run line, and 152, I'm fine. But I'm going to play the first 5 under as well, 4.5. Now this number's moved. It's now plus money on the first 5 under 4.5 plus 102. And I know the Dodgers lineup and all that, but unless Yamamoto gets rocked, I think I'm okay here. Now he could and whatever, and so I wouldn't be shocked if he did. It's going to happen at some point, but I'm going to play those two because I'm going to bank on Yamamoto. I'm going to go into the foxhole with the Dodgers. Look, it's a square play, blah blah blah. It's not trendy. It's not cool to bet Dodgers, but I think there's line value here. I really do with Yamamoto. And again, I'm not going to be overreact to the cross country flight.
I got to keep it real here, Doug. I never heard the term nerfy before you mentioned it yesterday. And so I was like, oh, I like the term nerfy. I got to have a nerfy tomorrow. So my lean in this game is for a nerfy under, right? Well, I guess I don't have to say under if it's a nerfy because that means it's under the.
It's not a yerfy. It's not a yerfy.
It's not a yerfy. It's a nerfy. And because I like both pitchers so much, I don't think the Diamondbacks, they'll have a tough time scoring, period, in this game. The role Yamamoto's on. You're right. At some point, it's going to bite him. I'm just not ready to believe it's going to happen tonight. So I'm going with the nerfy. I also like another lean I have on this one is the Diamondbacks under 3.5 runs for the game. So there you go.
What about the Dodgers bullpen being active yesterday? And obviously it was a tight game until late.
Yeah.
So they were. I mean, it's tough because bullpen guys can pitch back-to-back days, but I mean, I guess only Sauer pitched, so you're fine. He pitched 4 innings, so they went long relief there. So I stand corrected there. So you should be fine, fresh bullpen.
They did lose Evan Phillips. He went on the injured list. I don't know if it was last night or this morning. So they called up. I can't even remember now who they called up, but they should be all right in the pen, and so I'll lean in that direction. Always a good time to talk about the Rockies. We've done it a couple of days in a row. They got rained out. We both liked them a lot of plays in that game on Tuesday. Then it got rained out. Tonight or this afternoon, they start a doubleheader. The first game is at 3:20 Eastern, 3:10 Eastern. Casey Mize, who's put it all together this year, is pitching the first game against the veteran Kyle Freeland, who's been awful. The second game, I don't even think the Tigers have announced the starting pitcher yet. My guess is maybe they'll go a bullpen game. The Rockies are calling up a kid named Tanner Gordon. I say kid, he's 27 years old. He pitched for the Rockies last year and was hideous. 34 and a third innings last year, Doug. He had an 8.65 ERA, a negative 1.1 WAR, a 172 WHIP, 53 hits in 34 innings. So he got smoked last season, and he's getting called up to make his season debut against the Tigers team that's really good. I was leaning towards the Tigers sweeping this doubleheader, but I know you got some plays in this. We'll start with game one here, where the Tigers are minus 195. What do you got?
Yeah, with doubleheaders, unless it's a pitching matchup I love one way or another, I usually kind of see how the first game goes with the second game. So unless it's just like an ace going and you love the matchup and all righties versus a righty, whatever, one of those things, and I like a
Makes
prop,
sense.
then I'm in on it. But sometimes there's a team that's just historically bad, and you really got to seize the opportunity. And we see it in college basketball. Some teams are just gross at the beginning of the season because they haven't practiced and there's been injuries. I'm not afraid to just bully ball something, and the Rockies are that special. 6-29. And if you've been betting on them this year, you're down 19 and a half units. Worst in baseball by far. So I think the old school baseball, whether it's odds makers or bettors, won't let these lines get to -$3 and things like that. But I know a professional bettor and some other guys about a week or so ago were betting the adjusted win totals for these Rockies. It's just not low enough. They think they're going to win. This team's going to win like 30 games tops. And curious to hear your thoughts on that. But I'm not afraid to lay it and just continue to pound. So we got lucky yesterday, and that should be an encouragement. Even when the bats wake up for Colorado, their pitching's just not there. Now, I liked Kyle Freeland at one point, and frankly, he was a good story from the area and pitched great when he first came up, but it just doesn't have the stuff. And they're a disaster, and there's got to be a demoralizing locker room. We talked about the Phillies, and when teams are hot, I'm also not afraid to fade teams when they're running sort of downward spiraling and there's no relief in sight. So I'm going to do the half unit on the Tigers run line again, and then I'm going to play the team total over 5.5 runs. They get the visitor, so you get the guaranteed the ninth inning ups, and the Rockies pitching has been so bad. I believe the team total of their opponent has gone over 11 of 14 times or things like that. So again, no relief in sight. I'm just going to continue to fade this Colorado team, and unless they turn things around. I know the Pirates fired their manager, which is laughable, but I don't think there's been a shock to the system or anything like that for Colorado. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't agree with those who think they'll win 30 games. The White Sox just broke the record last year, and they finished with 40 wins or 39. I can't remember. I think the Rockies will be around that. I think they'll be around the record-breaking number again. I can't go as far as 30. I know they.
You look at the division, though, man. Yeah. The division's the X factor here.
Yeah, that's true. I think the Giants. Yeah, I think the Giants aren't as good as they've played. We'll see. I guess time will tell. Listen, saying they're going to win 40 games is no great accomplishment. But they'll
41 last year for the White Sox.
Yeah, even a team this bad will have 1 week where they play well. I think I can give them 1 out of 26 weeks, whatever it is, that they play well, and maybe that makes a difference. But just the fact that we're having a conversation about could they win just 30 games is really insane. But it just shows how bad the Rockies are, and I don't think their hot week starts this week. What's been a good story on the Tigers, and obviously they've been a great story in the American League, but the reemergence of one-time Cubs superstar Javi Baez, who since signing with Detroit has been a total disaster. But Javi Baez is playing center field for the Tigers now pretty much every day. He's got 18 ribbies and an OPS of 827. The last couple, Doug, since he's gone to Detroit, it looked like his career was over. The guy went from being an all-star with the Cubs to like the worst player in baseball. And I don't know if he's going to keep it up all year. He probably won't. But he's playing not at an all-star level, but he's playing well. And that's been a huge bonus for Detroit, who you didn't think their lineup was going to be great on paper. They've had some guys hurt, but he's been one of, along with Torkelson, of course, who's had a monster. He's having an all-star season. But Baez has been a huge, pleasant surprise for the Tigers so far this year.
Yeah, it really has. And that's the beauty of baseball, really sports in general. You get guys who just get rejuvenated out of nowhere, and then you learn really what they did, what they'd applied themselves. I'll never forget, I was in college. That's how old I am. When Jamal Mashburn was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and he was doing something like the splits, and he was with the Miami Heat, and basically just saying how stretching and this sort of fitness commitment, and granted nowadays this is, we do this in our local gym, and the knowledge is out there about stretching and Pilates and everything like that, but how he just sort of resurrected his career because he learned like this element of nutrition and fitness. So guys can turn things around for sure. They obviously at the core have this gift of athleticism and talent and skill set, and they've applied it to get to this level. The question is, can they also, turn the corner and get things going? We'll see. I mean, there's obviously guys like Rendon that just bottomed out when they moved to the Angels and things like that. And you wonder, how did this happen? So maybe things can turn around for certain guys, but you're right. Baez coming out of nowhere in center field has certainly been a pleasant surprise.
It is wild. Yes, you see things like this in all sports, but in baseball, these things happen way more often. Like Rendon was an all-star in Washington, and he's been one of the worst players in baseball. Same with Javi Baez before this year. I know in this guy's case, a lot of it's injury, but Chris Bryant, I thought early in his career, he was going to be a Hall of Famer, and his career might be over. He's been dealing with injuries. Wilson Contreras, another guy, maybe that's not fair. He's still been decent in St. Louis, but not the player he was. We've seen Cody Bellinger go from being Rookie of the Year to MVP to getting non-tendered to getting good again. And now he's struggling, with the Yankees. And, when you see it with an older player, okay, it makes sense. But in baseball, like LeBron James in the middle of his career just doesn't have a bad season out of nowhere. That doesn't happen unless there's an injury. But in baseball, you see it all the time.
And it's head games too for, certain guys like Sale, right? He had great last year, off to a struggling start. Pitchers always sort of baffle me, and maybe you learn later that they're tipping pitches or certain things, but you're right. It's usually injury related for sure.
Yeah. I think pitcher Alex Manoah, remember a couple of years ago, he had a great year with Toronto. Guy's barely pitched since then. And when he did pitch, he was terrible. All right, let's get to another game. Doug, we just talked about the no, we got the Tigers and Rockies there.
Yeah, and I want to mention, I'm a believer into the Tigers. I mean, best record in the American League.
Yeah,
it's not just a fate of the Rockies. The Tigers have it working for whatever reason. You mentioned guys like Baez turning things around, but the Guardians. Last year when people were doubting them, and guess who won the AL Central last year?
Yeah,
the Astros surged in the second half, yes, but some of these teams were certainly in the mix and sustained their surprising start. So I don't think it's a fluke for Detroit at all. And I'm gonna back them here. I think we can't. In baseball, such a funny sport. So with Casey Mize on the bump too, like that's the other thing. I didn't really talk about him. I'm okay with him in the run line situation.
Yeah, you look at the Tigers. I mentioned Torkelson briefly, and you just mentioned Mize. Like those were both first overall picks, Mize and Torkelson, and Mize had never really put it together. He'd been kind of blah. Torkelson 2 years ago had a really good year. Then last year he completely cratered, got sent to the minors. Before this season, they moved Colt Keith to first base, and it looked like Torkelson wouldn't even have a job. And then he wins the job in spring training, and he's, maybe been their best player. And Mize has been, after Skubal, their best pitcher. And so you have these draft picks, and sometimes with baseball, it takes time for guys to develop. We always like that. We always want it to happen immediately as soon as they get to the majors. But some guys take some time. And if Torkelson and Mize, who have the pedigree, can play like this all year, the Tigers can win the World Series.
I'm perfectly a believer in that. We saw the Diamondbacks come out of nowhere and make a run, right, and go to the World Series. So baseball is a funny game. Now it's more the funny outcomes usually occur when teams get hot late. Yep. So it's a little different than what we're talking about now, 40 games in. But nonetheless, it's certainly You got to understand this stuff, and some teams put it all together. And yes, we knew Skubal would be good coming into the season, but certain guys, it is really hard. And the only thing the high salary teams, the payroll teams do is that they have more margin for error, right?
Yes.
They can the Dodgers can sign a guy, and if he bottoms out, they can still be really good. But the teams that thread the needle with their spending can certainly compete and make a run if all the things that they sort of rolled the dice on go right.
A couple updates on the current games going on. If you're watching us live, Orioles lead the Twins 2-1 in the bottom of the fifth. Red Sox over the Rangers 2-0 top of the third. Royals lead the White Sox 1-0 top of the second. There's only 3 games we haven't talked about. You got the Blue Jays and Angels at 9:40 Eastern tonight. Chris Bassett and Jose Soriano. The Reds at the Braves tonight. I like the pitching matchup there. Nick Lodolo and Schwellenbach. But the one I really want to get into here, Doug, is the Phillies and the Rays tonight. We've talked a little bit about it already. The Phillies playing much better baseball. The Rays, very unusual, have been terrible at home. I know they're not their typical home. It's the Yankees, spring training complex. They're 9-15 at home, and they are 7-5 on the road. Jesus Luzardo, who the Phillies acquired from the Marlins in this offseason, is on the hill for Philly tonight. He's been sensational for the Phillies this year. Did give up a lot of hits against Arizona's last time out, but a 1.59 ERA. I'm sorry, a 1.59 ERA on the road, 1.94 ERA overall, 47 strikeouts. The guy, who was a one-time good pitcher with Oakland and Miami, seems to really be putting it all together, Doug. And I know you got something you like in this one.
Yeah, again, this is similar to the Rockies in that if things are rolling, I mean, the Phillies have scored at least 7 runs in 4 straight games. So maybe they're jonesing to get at bats at this makeshift ballpark for the Rays, this home field, quote unquote. But I'm going to back him. And you mentioned Luzardo. It's hard not to want to just back this guy. Now, I know there's going to be some regression at some point, but maybe he can have a stellar year. We've seen plenty of pitchers get new environment, pitch well, just everything fits right. And a lot can be going on in the personal life, whether it be home life, whatever, health, finally, things like that, extended family. I believe what my eyes saw. I was betting on Assad last year a lot, Imanaga last year, where the market was late to catch up on some of this stuff. And I'm okay backing Luzardo with that lineup also against Ryan Pepio, who I actually was betting on a lot last year in terms of his props and strikeouts and things like that. But he's been real shaky at home.
Yeah.
And he's off 2 decent outings, but both of those were on the road. Now they were against good to respectable lineups to grid lineups in the Padres and Yanks, but he gets a little shaky at home, gives up a lot of hits. I think this is a high volume hit game for the Phillies. I think they can smack around Pepio.
Max Kepler, who's had a solid start to the season for Philly, is the only player that's faced Pepio. He's 0 for 2 against him. Nobody else in the Philly roster has faced him. As for the Rays, there are a couple players on the Rays that have had success against Luzardo. Yandy Diaz is 4 for 9 against him, and Brandon Lowe is 2 for 5 against him with a home run and 5 ribbies. So there's a couple of guys there. Caballeros faced him once, 0 for 1. Christopher Morello for 4. Taylor Walls 0 for 3. So they have some experience. I don't know. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, but do you factor that in much?
It's all part of the equation.
Yeah.
You can't have blanket statements like ignoring it. Now, how long ago were those at bats? How many at bats? Like 0 for 2, not going to pay too much attention. Also, the type of pitcher. If it's sort of a unique delivery and he hides the hand later and releases the ball later than you would think, and the eyes need time to pick it up, maybe that's more of the equation. So it's all about what you think of like a pie chart, right? So how much of that slice of the pie does it matter to you? And I think that varies from better to better. But I think for me, everything's heavily nuanced in all this bracket of betting, and it just depends on the player. But if you look at past, let's say someone was 0-7 against him. Obviously, the pitcher batter matchup and the people involved is the largest reason for that. But there's also other factors part of that game, right? Which ballpark was it at? Day or night, home or road. So there's so many other moving parts. And I say this a lot, and I'll probably repeat it many times moving forward, is it's like a chemistry experiment when you're in the lab and you change like 4 ingredients. You can't pinpoint one of those was the result. The reason things changed, right? There's so many moving parts from game to game. So yes, trends are fun, but there's other factors that were involved in some of these streaks or trends that you really need to kind of decipher and be able to kind of block out the noise and trim the fat when you're trying to find the reason something is going a certain way.
One lean I wanted to give you. I was curious your take on this, Doug. I really love Jesus Luzardo over 5.5 strikeouts in this one. Rays are bottom 10 in the league in terms of striking out in their lineup. Luzardo's had 6 or more strikeouts in 5 of his 7 starts. And the only 2 times he didn't were against the Cubs, where he had 5, and the Giants 4. And obviously, those have been 2 of the better lineups in the league. So I love the over 5.5 strikeouts there. What do you think?
Yeah, I would be a pass, but it would be over or pass for me.
Okay.
I guess my only question would be, and this is a concern as I was handicapping, is how much of this ballpark is going to be in the back of his head as he's pitching. I worry about some of these pitchers trying to think they have to do anything differently and nibble here or whatnot, and can't trust the stadium or trust their stuff, or just the fact that it's a new environment, right? A stadium that he hasn't pitched at before. So those are things that are in the back of my head. So I just wonder if that plays a role, even if it's just in his headspace.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm wondering if he's pitched there, maybe in spring training. The Phillies and the Marlins do have spring training in Florida, but I don't know if he's pitched there in spring training. But obviously, it's a completely different story pitching a spring training game when you might be facing a bunch of minor leaguers, or even if you face the major leaguers, it might only be for one at bat, depending on what time of the year you face them. So yeah, it's a good point. These stadiums, these new stadiums, or these minor league stadiums have not been good for the home teams. Neither the Rays or A's have played particularly great in these stadiums so far.
Makes sense. I mean, athletes, all of us, frankly, are creatures of habit, and we like routine. I used to work with a guy. He says, "I like to play home games," so he liked everything a certain way at his desk and a certain way. We all like our order, and we're creatures of habit, guys. I always say this about the NBA: they love their naps in the afternoon. So when there's an early game in the weekend, you have to factor that in. But in baseball, I mean, look, there's superstition's a big part of it too. So going into this unknown it does present an unknown. And I guess there's a little bit of advantage for the home team. But to your point, it's not like the stats indicate that the home team has this advantage. So, but it's just something to consider. Again, just visualize that pie chart. That's what I do. If you have a model or you do some projections, it's all about what you weight on that column when you look at your laptop or desktop, and what you prioritize. And everyone has sort of their different sort of assessment of certain qualities of a matchup.
Been no home runs so far today in the 3 afternoon games that are going on. How often do you like to bet home run props? I know you could get some crazy numbers there. Do you stay away from that in general, or do you take a
Absolutely,
chance
in
once in a
general,
while?
I stay
Yeah.
away. I mean, look, it's really advantageous for the house
Yeah.
on those. But I can't fault. So I look at this stuff like investing, so to speak. Like I look at this as trying to, grind profits and things like that always. But I do respect the recreational bettor who wants a little action. So if they're going to put $1 5 home run leg parlay and try to have a lottery ticket, I am not going to scoff at, oh,
Right.
yes, that's low value. I get it. I totally get it. And I respect it. I just make sure the unit sizes are according to that, and understanding this is not a get rich quick situation. And, um, take it for what it is. And if it is, I would, when I was at ESPN before legalization in 2018, I would still be on panels and things like that and talk about it. And I said, look, we as a country will eventually redefine what we see betting as. And we with marketing campaigns, whether it be beer companies or restaurants, they'll have all these pictures of a bucket of beers and at Buffalo Wild Wings and enjoying the games and all that. There's no difference spending 25, $50, whatever it is, on a bucket of beer, watching a game with your buddies, and spending that on an over ticket on a game and watching the game with friends. So I'm certainly okay with that element of its entertainment. Maybe it's not the most perfect odds, but I also am a big in-game wager, in-game live bettor, and 4 minutes into the game, the line's going to change. So we can talk for 2 weeks when the Super Bowl point spread's posted, right? Ooh, is it 1? Is it 1.5? Move to 2, and then opening drive touchdown, it's like 4.5, and just like that, right? So with all these home run props or even the money line, like, things are going to change in one at bat. So we can break down all these games and things like that. Now, I know the handicap changes as well, but I do think we should understand that in certain instances, whether it's a home run prop in the right, low amount of money, like, it is fun to have crazy leg parlays and things like that to get you through the day if you're just watching baseball on the couch.
Speaking of crazy bets, I referenced this, I think, 2 days ago, but big upset, Doug, on the Pope, the new Pope. I don't know if you heard, but it's an American Pope for the first time ever. Robert Prevost, I believe, is his real name. Obviously, he'll get his Pope name, but he was. We don't have Pope betting at Bet Rivers, I don't think, but I did see. I didn't even look for it because whatever, but I did see that this guy was not listed in the top 8, so it's a shocking upset of who wins the American Pope. Doug, are you excited?
Yeah, a lot of tickets have to be refunded if it's not offered in the index, then no ticket cashes. So
Right.
they all have to be refunded. But it's been funny on Twitter to see the sports cliches applied, whether the Vatican's still under the salary cap with this signing and things like that. Guys like Adam Schefter getting involved. But yeah, no, it's been fun to embrace. It's not quite Panda Watch that some of the stuff we've been on with the sports very parallels, but
right.
yes, big news out of the Vatican.
Yeah. Finally, we got a comment from Zwarch, my man Z. He said, "Did I miss the Blue Jays talk? I mentioned the matchup. It's one of the few games we didn't really get into. I said Chris Bassett and Jose Soriano. Bassett, he's got to be close to 40. Nah, not quite. He's 36. I thought he was older than that. But he's actually pitched very well this year. Anything you like there, Doug? We didn't have it on the list, so I'm assuming you don't. But
yeah, I mean, look, this is kind of a wild card pitcher. Both of them. You don't know what you're going to get. You alluded to Bassett's been okay.
Yeah,
Soriano's been kind of feast or famine, right?
Yeah.
And these lineups, Blue Jays, I guess they're kind of performing like we thought they would. Angels started out hot after 5 games, and then they've come back to earth, and they are who we thought they were. So both these teams, comparable records. The lineups are, Vlad Jr. is always exciting to watch, but this lineup is, certainly a class below the rest of the American League East, and then obviously the Orioles are underperforming. But I just don't want to back any of these teams. Like the Jays are favored. Do you really want to lay juice on the road with the Blue Jays, even against the Angels?
No.
But the Angels could be, if they get a strong performance from Soriano. This is something I ask myself a lot. I'm like, which. When I break down a game, which bet or whatever will I feel less dumb about if I make it, right? Or, if I make this bet, will I feel stupid if it loses? And yeah, I kind of will feel stupid if I bet on either team. Yeah. Like, if I bet the Angels, even if it's only plus 115 or whatever, I'll feel dumb. I'll be like, what am I doing? Like, there's a million bets out there. There's no need to step up to the counter and make that wager. If I lay odds with the Jays, with Chris Bassett on the road against a guy like Soriano who's capable of throwing BBs, well, I feel dumb. So I just don't know if there's an edge here. I was actually looking at the total.
Yeah.
The under actually in the first 5, because all you really need is one of them to kind of get hot. So that's sometimes, but then again, it's like, look, it's like fading both lineups and hoping one pitcher pitches well and the other one's not a gas can. So I was looking at the first 5 under. I think that would be the one I would have felt less dumb about.
I will say I have no lean, no bet on this game, but I will just give the folks some facts that you do with them what you will. The Angels who are not a good lineup in general, but they have 4 players with at least 7 at-bats, again, take it for what it's worth, against Chris Bassett that have an OPS of 800 or better. Joe Adell, Tim Anderson. Now, Tim Anderson probably did a lot of that when he was good with the White Sox. Jorge Soler and Travis d'Arnaud, who's their I don't know if he's going to even play tonight because the lineups are not out. But those 4 guys all have an OPS of 800 or better against Chris Bassett in about between 7 and 10 at-bats. So do something with it, do nothing with it, whatever you want. I'll give you the facts. So final question here from T. Lynch. Are we buying into the Mariners' ability to actually put the bat on the ball? If so, got to look to futures market with the pitching staff. Before you answer, Doug, Mariners have been fascinating because the last few years, they've probably had the best rotation, right? And their lineup's been terrible. They've been hitting great. They've been without 2 of their best pitchers, and they're playing well. If their lineup can continue to hit with Gilbert and Kirby coming back, I think both relatively soon, they could be dangerous. But are you buying in this offense continuing to be good as the season goes?
So I guess the question is, define, win the division, make a deep run the playoffs, make the playoffs. I guess where do we set the line to the futures market that whether we're buying into or not? Do I think they can reach the postseason?
Yeah.
Yes. Would I bet on it? No. That doesn't mean I would bet against them and bet the yes, no, the no prop or the adjusted win total under or things like that. And again, you have to kind of, in sports, you can't just wait and say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. That's not really what betting is. We'd all love to bet a game with tomorrow's newspaper. But the Mariners, we've been down this road before and they've disappointed. I do not buy into this lineup. They have not been, they've been outperforming what I expected because I expected them to be bottom 15 or so. But I'm not ready to buy into this. Baseball's a long season, and they're going to win low-scoring games when they win. And yes, the offense has been a pleasant surprise, but it's still early.
Yeah, and the tricky thing with the American League in terms of betting a team to make the playoffs is the National League's kind of top-heavy and bottom-heavy, where the American League is really – I know the Tigers have been particularly good to start the season, and I think we both like the Tigers, and I don't know that I like them to keep up this winning percentage, but I think they're going to be good. But the difference between the best team in the American League and maybe even the 12th or 11th team in the American League is not huge. There's a lot of good teams. I don't know if there's any great teams. In the National League, there's some really good teams and a lot of really bad teams. It's more mid-tier, I think, in the American League. More balanced.
It's fair. That's fair. Eventually, the cream rises to the top. We talked about it earlier, the Astros winning the division a year ago. Water finds its level, right? That's the cliche. Not always, because Davey Johnson, the village idiot, will certainly attest that doesn't always happen in baseball, even though it's a 162-game season. Sometimes things can just go wrong. But for the most part, the stuff levels out. And but earlier we also validated that teams can players can turn things around, teams can get hot, teams can thread the needle and have all the salaries and all the turnaround seasons sort of align, and maybe that's going on in Detroit. It's sort of a gut instinct, and it takes years of doing this, watching and then also betting it, because you pick up on things when you bet. You pick up on more things, I should say, when you bet on them. But the verdict is still out in my eyes on a team like Seattle.
Betting Weekly Fast Break. If you're a big basketball fan, and the NBA playoffs have been phenomenal outside of that awful second game last night where Oklahoma City just demolished Denver. Incredible win by the Knicks yesterday. Betting Weekly, Betting Weekly Fast Break, is going to be coming on in 15 minutes. What do you got going on there, Doug?
Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, it's been a historically awesome start to the postseason. Really, the second round has been what's been so alarming. You got the Celtics down 0-2 after the first 2 games at home, but only one game tonight. We'll break that down. Steph Curry's out at least a week. how do we respond with the Warriors and T-Wolves, but we'll also look ahead to all the other series coming up this weekend and really, really intriguing sort of adjustments in the market. The Bet Rivers pricing with the Knicks and Celtics on that series price now that New York is up 2-0 and headed home. And there's still opportunity and value. And you mentioned the blowout. How do we respond with OKC and Denver looking forward? So there's a lot of good discussion coming up. Wes Reynolds is going to join me. We had him here on the Betting Weekly Hardball earlier in the week, so it'll be good. Top of the hour.
You got Betting Weekly. It's baseball, basketball. You got soccer and tennis, all as part of the Bet Weekly studios, all brought to you by Bet Rivers. Check out next week on my podcast on Tuesday. I'll have an interview with during the live show at 9 a.m. with Joe Schobert, former Browns linebacker, for those who are interested in such things. And I'll be on Friday night following the Cavs and Pacers in Indiana to do a live reaction there. And Doug will be back with you tomorrow as well, Betting Weekly Hardball at 2 o'clock. So make sure you're locked in for that. Doug, good to talk to you as always. Been a fun week, and we'll do it again next time.
Yeah, man, a lot of fun. Really good to break things down from a betting perspective and roll up our sleeves and hopefully give out some winners. So it was a lot of fun. And just a reminder, all my plays I gave out today were half-unit plays. So, let's continue to pound those Rockies.
Let's win some money at Bet Rivers. Thanks to Chris and Alex for producing today. We'll talk to you next time on Betting Weekly Hardball.